Dear students, welcome to our fifth recorded lecture of Money and Banking course, where I will explain another part of Chapter 3, which is entitled as What is Money? Last week we started this chapter and we discussed the meaning of money and the difference between money, currency, income, and wealth. We have also talked about the three functions of money, and we covered the first function, which is using money as a medium of exchange. So today we will cover the rest of money functions. So we will talk about the role of money in measuring the value of different things, and also we will talk about the role of money in saving the purchasing power from one time into another time, which means that the function of money as a store of wealth. Also, we will explain the evolution of the payment system, which means that we will talk about the different forms of money from the primitive societies to the most recent financial innovation that are used as money. So now let's talk about the second function of money, which is unit of account, which means that we use money to measure the value in the economy. This means that we measure the value of goods and services in terms of money, just as we measure weight in terms of kilograms or grams. And to explain the importance of this role of money, we need to look back at the barter economy that I have explained last week. So in a barter economy, there is no money, and goods and services are exchanged directly for other goods and services, as we have explained last week. So for simplicity, we will assume that we have only four goods, which are bread, peach, banana, and oranges. So because we assume that there is no money in the economy, so we need to know the value of each commodity in terms of the other commodities. For example, we may need to know the value of bread in terms of peaches, banana, orange, as it appear here. So now, after knowing the price of bread in terms of the other three commodities, but we don't know the price of peaches in terms of other commodities, so here we need to know the price of peaches in terms of banana and orange. Then we also need to know the price or the value of banana in terms of oranges. So now, as we have seen, we have four commodities, which are bread, peach, oranges, and bananas. But to evaluate the value of different things, or the value of each commodity in terms of the other, we need to know six different prices. So now let's see what will happen if we have more than those four commodities. As we have seen, when we have four goods, this requires computing six different prices to be able to exchange them in the market. Then what happens if we have more than these four commodities? For example, what will happen if we have 10 different goods? In this case, we need to know 45 different prices to be able to exchange one good for another. And then if we have 100 good, this means that we need to know 4,950 prices. And then to compute the number of required prices, we can use this formula here, where the number of prices equals n times n minus 1 divided by 2, where n is the number of goods in the economy. Now imagine how hard it would be in a barter economy to shop at a supermarket with 1,000 different items on its shelves. And if you want to decide which item is cheaper than the other, then for each commodity it will have 999 prices. So in this case, you will lose your time trying to read the price list of just one commodity. And as we have mentioned last week, we said that more times means higher transaction cost. So here the transaction cost will be very high if we don't have money and we need to compare the value of each commodity with all other commodities available in the society. But if we have money in the economy, then the number of prices would equal the number of goods. So for example, if we have 10 goods, then we need to know just 10 prices and so on. So as we can see here, using money as a unit of account reduces transaction costs in the economy by reducing the number of prices that we need to compute. And also it decreases transaction cost because you can shop faster than before. Then the third function of money is that we use money to store the value or to store the wealth, which implies that it saves the purchasing power from the time we receive our income to the time we spend our income. So this function of money is very important because most of us do not want to spend their incomes immediately. However, we save part of our incomes and until we spend it later. So this means that we need money to keep the purchasing power from the time we receive our incomes at to the time we spend this income at. And here we should note that there are some other assets that could be used to save the purchasing power, such as stocks, bonds, land, houses, or gold. And even these assets may generate some returns for their holders. For example, if you keep your savings in terms of bonds, then you will receive some interest payments. And also, if you purchase a stock, then you can get a share of profits, which we call dividends. But if we keep our money in terms of cash, then we will not receive any return on the money. Also, if you hold some of your savings in terms of gold or houses, then you can get a return if the price of these assets increase. Then, based on that, we have a very important question, which is why people hold the money while it has a zero return. The answer is that because money is the most liquid asset of all its counterparts, which means that we can use money directly to make purchases. So here people will prefer to hold some liquid assets. So now let's define the meaning of liquidity. Liquidity is the relative ease and speed with which an asset can be converted into a medium of exchange or a way of payment. So what we can say here is that money can be used directly as a medium of exchange, while other assets must be converted to money before using them to make purchases. And of course, when we transfer or when we convert other assets into medium of exchange, this will imply some transaction cost. So here, people will prefer to hold some liquid asset in terms of money to eliminate the transaction cost. For example, if you want to sell a house, then you must pay a commission or even you may need to reduce the price of this house if you need to sell it quickly. So people hold the money to avoid the transaction cost of holding other assets. However, people prefer liquidity, but money has another problem where it loses its value during high inflation periods. And as you know, inflation is persistent increase in the general price level. So what does this mean? It means that if prices doubled, the value of money is decreased by half. So usually in periods of high inflation rates, people tend to hold other assets rather than money. This is because money loses its value. When money loses its value, we can say that money doesn't perform its job or its function as a store of wealth. So during inflation or high periods of inflation, money loses its value or its function as a store of wealth. So it's very common during hyperinflation that people will replace money with other assets. But before moving to next point, let's define the meaning of hyperinflation. What is hyperinflation? Hyperinflation is basically an extreme inflation in which the inflation rate exceeds 50% each month. One of the most common cases of hyperinflation happened in Germany during the World War I, and at this period, inflation rate sometimes exceeds 1000% each month. So in this case, no one would like to hold the money. Why? Because it doesn't save the purchasing power. So in such a case, people may tend to exchange goods and services directly with other goods and services. So as I said, money is the most important function of money here is liquidity. However, during high inflation, money loses its value, so people will tend to hold other assets rather than money. Now let's move to next point, which is the evolution of the payment system, where we will discuss the different forms of money that have evolved over time. And these forms include commodity money, fiat money, checks, electronic payments, and electronic money or e-money. So, the first form of money that appeared in the ancient time was the commodity money, where commodity money was used as a medium of exchange or as a way of payment in most primitive societies. For example, before the 8th century, Japanese used arrowheads, rice grains, and gold powder to serve as commodity money. Another example of commodity money was in Brazil at the 17th century, where they used some goods such as wood, sugar, cocoa, tobacco, and cloth. The idea is that the main condition for commodity to serve as money, it must be widely accepted in the society. So everyone living in this society must be willing to take or to use it as a way of payments for goods and services. So to achieve this general acceptance by people living in the society, many societies use precious metals such as gold and silver as money since they are accepted by everyone, and also they are valuable and could be easily standardized and could be divided into change as we have explained last week. Here, the first historic character that have his image registered in a coin was Alexander the Great around the year 330 before Christmas. So as I said, commodity money must be generally accepted by everyone and everyone must be willing to take it in payments for goods and services. Also, it must be valuable, easily standardized, and divisible commodities, such as precious metals, cigarettes, and different types of crops such as beans and rice. Based on that, we can define the commodity money as it's money made up of precious metals or another valuable commodity. But the main problem with this type of money is that it's very heavy. So it will be very hard to transport it from one place into another place, especially for large purchases such as house. So in this case, you may need a van to move commodity money from your place into the seller's place. Well, second form of money is called fiat money. But before explaining its meaning, let's explain how it started or evolved. Basically, paper currency, which are pieces of paper that were used as a way of payment, started by commercial banks that issued commercial banknotes that carried a guarantee to convert these paper currency into coins or into a fixed quantity of the precious metals. Then, after that, this paper money turned to be in the form of fiat money. To explain this, let's start with the meaning of fiat. What is the meaning of fiat? It means an official order given by somebody in authority. So this implies that this type of money is decreed by monetary authorities or central banks. So we should use it in our payments according to the law. So current form of fiat money is printed by governments and must be legally accepted as a way of payment for our purchases and in the repayment of debts. However, it's not convertible into precious metal anymore. So the difference between the first form of paper money and the current form of fiat money is that the old form, which is paper money issued by commercial bank, was convertible to precious metals, but current form, which is fiat money, is not convertible to precious metal, but we must use it according to the law. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of fiat money? If we compare fiat money with commodity money, we can say that fiat money is much lighter than coins or precious metals, but it can be accepted as a way of payment only if there is some trust in the authorities that issue this money. What about the drawback or the limitation of fiat money? It has a very important drawback, which is they are easily stolen and can be expensive to move it in large amounts. So fiat money cannot be transferred easily from one place into other place for a very large transaction. For this reason, modern banking developed a new way of payments which is known as checks, as I will explain now. So as I said, due to the limitations of fiat money, modern banking introduced checks, which can be defined as an instruction to your bank to transfer money from your bank account to someone else's bank account when he or she deposits the check. So what are the advantages and the limitations of using checks? Let's start by the advantages of using checks. First, using checks reduces the transportation cost associated with payment system, and this will lead to improving economic efficiency. Also, checks are suitable for large transactions since they can be written for any amount up to the balance in the account, and this implies that making transactions for large amounts will be much easier. Third, the loss from theft is greatly reduced because they provide appropriate receipts for purchases. On the other hand, the limitation of using checks includes it takes time to get checks from one place into another place. Also, it takes some time before the bank allows you to use the funds available in this account or after depositing it. And finally, processing checks involved some cost. For example, the cost of processing all checks in USA exceeds $10 billion each year. Then the fourth type of payments is called electronic payments, and this type of payments is evolved because of the development of inexpensive computers and the spread of internet, which make it cheap to pay bills online. This implies that instead of writing checks, now banks provide a website in which you can just log on and make some few quick clicks, and then the required funds should be transferred from your account into another person's bank account. Also, for repeated bills, you can make an instruction to be automatically deducted from your bank account, and you don't need to repeat this process each month or each period. This innovation was very beneficial since it lowers the cost of using the checks. Now, the fifth type of the payment methods is electronic money or e-money. And in this type of money, we have three different forms, which are debit card, stored value card or smart card, and electronic cash or Ecash. Well, the first type of e-money is called debit card, which it enables consumers to purchase goods and services by transferring funds directly from their bank accounts to the merchants or the store's account. But here we have some notes. These cards can be only used by the authorized person whose name appears on the card. So here, the card holder name must appear, as we can see here. So this is the only person who is allowed to use this card, and also this person owns the available funds in this card. Also, this type of cards may be issued on current account or on a salary account. Usually, current days, these cards are more used than cash because at most supermarkets, you can just swipe your debit card through the card reader, and in this case, you have to just enter your PIN code. Then the amount of your purchases will be deducted from your bank account and then transferred to the store's bank account. Most banks and companies such as Visa and MasterCard issue debit cards, which you can use them to withdraw cash from any ATM as well. Second type of e-money is called stored value card or smart card, which is a payment method with which the monetary value is stored on the card itself, not an external account maintained by financial institutions. So as we can see here, there is no card holder name appear on the card, and anyone can use it directly. Because many of you may mix between debit, credit, and smart cards, let's quickly compare between them. First difference is that in debit cards, the money is on deposit with the issuer of this card, which means that the cardholder owns these funds. On the other hand, in credit cards, money is lent from the issuer or the bank, and it is subject to credit limit set by the issuer. So, in the case of credit card, if you withdraw money using this card, you should repay them along with an additional charge in terms of interest. Second difference is that debit and credit cards are usually issued in the name of individual account holders, so they must be used by the authorized person whose name appears or written on the card. On the other hand, for stored value cards, they are unnamed, which means that anyone can use them, as in the case of gift cards and telephone calling cards. So, as I said, they may be used by anyone. Also, for stored value cards, they are prepaid money cards, and this means that they may be disposed when the value is used, which means that they are used for just one time, or some other cards, some other smart cards can be topped up, which means that you can use them for repeated times, as in the case of a fare card. The third and final type of electronic money is called Ecash, where you can get Ecash by setting an account with a bank that has links to the internet, and then has the Ecash transferred to your computer or your mobile phone. Then, when you want to buy something, you choose the good from the store website and click the buy button for this item or the good you want to buy. So the Ecash will be transferred automatically from your computer to the merchant's computer after the bank validation. So let's look at this graph to explain it in more details. So in step 1, you buy the Ecash from your bank, and then in step 2, the bank sends Ecash to you, to your computer or to your mobile phone in terms of bits. Then in step 3, after choosing what you want to purchase from the store website, you send Ecash to the store or the merchant. Then in step 4, the merchant checks with the bank to see if the required funds are valid or not. Then if the bank verifies that the Ecash is valid, then you can complete the transaction with the store. So now I will stop at this point. So let me summarize what I have explained. We started by explaining two functions of money, which are unit of account and store of wealth. And then we discussed the evolution of the payment system and explained the different forms of money, starting from the commodity money that have been used in the primitive societies, until we covered the most recent most recent forms of money, which is electronic money or e-money. Thank you for watching, and see you next week.